Hey, it's me Lex, back at you with another Pathfinder video. Today I'm covering the Battle Harbinger class archetype from the new book coming out in about a week, Lost Omens Divine Mysteries. Real quick before we get into it, shout out to Paizo for providing a complimentary review copy, but as always, my thoughts are my own. I've been real excited for this class archetype since its announcement a few months back. I think it was at Gen Con or Paizo Con. I don't keep up with the live streaming stuff, but I've always been a big lover of all of the different ways that clerics can customize and express themselves in the game. I've also pretty firmly adhered to saying that the War Priest was actually a very good doctrine for the class, but it just wasn't what people wanted from the name War Priest. And I think Battle Harbinger might do that for some people. I also wanted to get ahead of any sorts of comments down below that might be forming, because I've seen some preliminary discourse online for the Battle Harbinger class archetype. It's been quite negative, at least what I've seen. I think that this is a solid enough class. It's definitely not going to be something that you'll want to stay away from because it's bad. Although, as with any other class or class archetype, you're definitely going to want to consider what it provides you and decide if that's worth it for the type of character that you're trying to build. So let's get into it, take a quick look at exactly what it offers you. There's some flavor text here talking about the role of Battle Harbinger in a clerical society. But more or less what it's saying is that Battle Harbingers tend not to stay in the churches like the clerics do. They tend to go out and do things, and then they'll work closely with champions as well to either train each other or learn from one another. And a few other things that I'll talk about a little bit later. As for specifically how they work, the idea behind a Battle Harbinger is that even more so than the War Priest, you've dedicated yourself to martial prowess to the detriment of your magical abilities. And there's a very nice thing here as well, where it specifies that it is at the expense of your restorative abilities as well, because defeating one's enemies is more important than healing an ally in the heat of battle. The time for healing comes after. So very interesting. Prerequisites. You have to be a cleric. You do not gain the Absolute Faith class feature, which is the level, I believe, 9 class feature that gives you Master Will saves as any other type of cleric, and you don't gain the Miraculous spell class feature, which is 10th rank spells. And I have some notes as we go along here. This, when pushed into a table that I've maintained, looks like this. All clerics have this top line perception, with red being trained, orange being expert, and yellow with the little plus being master, which also increases your successes to critical successes. So all clerics have this perception from 1 to 20. All clerics have this reflex from 1 to 20. And then, depending on if you're a normal cloistered cleric, a War Priest cleric, or a Battle Harbinger cleric, you will either get your Fortitude saves to Expert at 3rd level, or start with them at Expert. And then, if you started with them at Expert, you will get Master either at level 15 or at level 13. Then, all clerics start out with Expert Will saves. Every cleric other than Battle Harbinger gets Master Will saves at level 9 here. Battle Harbinger cleric has to wait until level 15 to get that. So that's what this looks like for your saves and your perception. Other than that, your spell casting is also adjusted. You become a wave caster that looks like this. You have the normal amount of cantrips. You start out with only a single spell per day, which increases to 2, and then 2 and 1 of your highest 2 and 2, and then that 2 and 2 will progress throughout all of the levels until you have 9th rank spells, at which point it caps out at 4 total spells, 2 9th rank and 2 8th rank. This is very similar to the, or in fact identical to the Magus and Summoner classes. Although your casting does remain prepared, so you'll have to choose your spells every daily preparations and lock them in. Also, your Divine Font, which is the free 4 spells that are always max rank that you get every day, that increase to 5 at level 5 and 6 at level 15. Instead of being able to prepare heal or harm into that font, you instead gain a battle font, which allows you to prepare battle aura spells. This means bless or bane, and you can prepare either one into those slots, but it has to be one of those 2 spells. Any feat that refers to a quote-unquote battle aura will refer to these spells, so Bane and Bless, regardless of whether they were cast with your standard spell slots or your Divine Font spell slots, which means that you cannot get the battle font abilities from scrolls or other ways that you can get additional castings, which means that between your font and your normal spell casting, that is the maximum number of times per day that you can benefit from the battle font as we go through into some of these features here. And then your battle auras will use your class DC instead of your spell DC. So we'll get into the doctrine adjustment here to kind of understand what exactly that means. Instead of choosing a doctrine, you follow the Creed of Battle. At first level, you gain light and medium armor proficiency, expert proficiency in fortitude saves, training in all martial weapons, and if your deity's favored weapon is a simple weapon or unarmed attack, you get deadly simplicity. Additionally, at 13th level, when divine defense gives you expert proficiency in unarmed defense, it also gives it to you for light and medium armor. So this is a pretty solid start. You get to be a martial on the front lines. You have medium armor, which means you can be a little bit more loose with your dexterity. You only need +1 if you're wearing a breastplate. You can go a little heavier into strength as well to deal some damage. And having the ability to use martial weapons right out the gate, or use deadly simplicity to make up for the damage lost by using a simple weapon. Solid enough. At 5th level, you gain expert proficiency with your deity's favored weapon, martial weapons, simple weapons, and unarmed attacks. So you're staying on pace with the normal martial progression as far as your attacks go. And when you critically succeed in an attack roll, you apply the weapon's critical specialization effect. And your proficiency rank for your class DC increases to expert. So this is at 5th level here. As opposed to normally you would be getting your class or your spellcasting DC at 7. This is giving your class DC at 5. And so with your battle auras using your class DC instead of your spell DC, this is kind of a very solid boost. You're getting +2 to, if you're using Bane, Bane saves 2 levels early. At 9th level, you gain Reactive Strike just for free and as a cleric feat. So you can start making use of that reaction to exert some control onto the battlefield. I've long said that being able to use your reaction is one of the best things that you can ensure to put into your build. It's a whole extra action you should be trying to use every turn. And particularly here, Reactive Strike is, I think, one of the stronger ones that you can get. So this is a super solid grab. At 11th level, your proficiency ranks for spell attacks and spell DC increases to expert. So this is the standard slower caster progression. This is the same as War Priest. At level 11, you're getting expert instead of at level 7. At level 13, you gain master proficiency with your deity's favored weapon. Your proficiency rank for fortitude saves increases to master. And when you roll a success on a fortitude save, you get a critical success instead. I find it very interesting here that up until now you've been able to use martial weapons, simple weapons, and unarmed attacks, but now here at level 13, when you're gaining master proficiency for your attacks, it has to be with your deity's favored weapon. So think about that. If you were considering choosing any other type of weapon, you'll want to be careful to not end up being stuck at expert proficiency. And then here at level 15, your proficiency rank for your class DC increases to master. This is at level 15, whereas normal spell casting is also at level 15. So now we're back on the normal spellcaster track here as far as your battle auras go. And your proficiency rank for will saves increases to master. And then at level 19, your proficiency ranks for light and medium armor and unarmored defense increase to master, and your proficiency rank for your class DC increases to legendary. You also get some additional feats here. Vicious Swing, Intimidating Strike, and Bespell Strikes. Although they are provided at different levels than their normal ones. Normally they would be available at level 1, 2, and 4. For the Battle Harbinger, they're available at 2, 4, and 6. So you can get some extra damage with a 2-action attack on the Vicious Swing. You can cause creatures to become repeatedly frightened and debuff them with Intimidating Strike, again using 2 actions on an attack. Or Bespell Strikes once a turn as a free action when you cast a non-cantrip spell, gives you a bit of extra damage. Overall, the doctrine here for the Battle Harbinger is pushing you definitely more towards an offensive role rather than the sort of defensive role that a War Priest is supposed to be in. Your casting is going to be just as effective as a War Priest's, although you will have far fewer spells. You're also not going to be as resistant on the battlefield because your lack of a healing divine font. So look out for that one. But it is definitely pushing you towards a more offensive role by giving you better access to weapons and weapon scaling and reactive strike, and being able to use your battle aura at level 5 at expert proficiency gives you a nice early game boost, even if it doesn't keep up being ahead with giving you accelerated proficiency throughout. Now, when we move on to the actual dedication feats here, you become trained in your choice of either athletics or acrobatics, a different skill if you're already trained in both, and you gain the toughness general feat, or another one of your choice if you already have it. This is just increasing the amount of hit points that you have. Essentially, you increase from an 8 HP class to a 9 HP class as part of being a Battle Harbinger. Not quite on the level of fighter or anything like that, but it is decent, and athletics or acrobatics, it's a skill training. Next up, at level 4 here, you can pick up Aura Enhancement, which adds Benediction and Malediction to the spells you can prepare with your additional slots from your Divine Font. They are also battle auras for you, which means that you can then benefit from them whether they come out of your font slots or your normal spellcasting slots. And let me pull this up here as well, because you might not be familiar with Benediction and Malediction. They are new spells. They're essentially Bless and Bane, but instead of influencing the attack roll bonuses for yourself and enemies, or you and your team or your enemies, they influence the armor class of yourself and your team or your enemies. And so we can have these right next to each other. Bless and Benediction, both a +1, just to attack rolls or AC. And then Malediction and Bane are both a will save that you can force creatures to repeat by sustaining it, that imposes a -1 penalty to either attack rolls or AC. And both of them can be sustained on subsequent turns to expand the aura. So this increases the amount of options you have available to you, but isn't giving you any more resources, and having to prepare them ahead of time, you might want to look out for being sure that you have things that will actually be useful. Here, when we continue on to the other level 4 feat, we have Tandem Onslaught. The first time each round that you successfully hit and deal damage to an enemy creature with a strike using a weapon or unarmed attack, you can automatically sustain a single battle aura that you currently have active, which also does any additional effects that come with sustaining it. So when you hit something with your weapon, you can automatically sustain Malediction, for example. I'll probably be using Malediction throughout this talk as the example, which will expand its aura by 10 feet and cause creatures that weren't yet affected to repeat their saving throws. So they might end up taking that effect even if they have not already. Then we move on to the level 6 feats. We have Exigent Aura. This makes it so that your battle auras are able to affect mindless creatures, even though they are mental effects. Although mindless creatures will gain a +4 circumstance bonus on saving throws to resist the battle aura's effects. This is mostly fine because the large circumstance bonus, I know it can look a little intimidating. Mindless creatures tend to have low will saves. Even if it's not their lowest save, it tends to be low in general. And so you should be finding decent amounts of success with this feat. And the other feat at level 6 here is Harbinger's Protection. You become trained in heavy armor, and when you gain expert or greater proficiency in any type of armor, you also gain that in heavy armor. I wanted to bring in the War Priest's armor feat here, and this is kind of backing up the idea that you're like a War Priest that's more offensively focused. A War Priest is very defensively focused. And so War Priest's armor is this same feat, but with even more benefits, with being able to treat armor as lower bulk, and it comes 4 levels earlier. So keep that in mind. You're not meant to be a tank, you're meant to be more of an offensive force, although you can certainly supplement your armor class using Benediction. Creed Magic at level 8 here is going to give you some additional feats. You gain some additional spells, I should say. You gain 2 special 2nd rank Creed spell slots, which can be used to prepare Resist Energy, See the Unseen, Sure Strike, and Water Breathing as divine spells. You still have to prepare them into these 2, and it's from this very limited list. And then at 10th level, the extra slots increase to 3rd rank, and you can also choose Haste or Heroism. Haste is a very good pick here, so at this point I would say it's very much worth it. And you're able to branch out of the divine list here. And then at 14th level, the extra slots increase to 4th rank, and you add Fly and Unfettered Movement. Both very solid spells. I wanted to compare this to the Studious spells benefits that Maguses get automatically. This gives them the same thing. They get 2 special 2nd level Studious spell slots, which can be used to prepare from a limited list of spells. The Battle Harbinger version, Creed Magic, gets the 3rd rank slots a level earlier, as the Magus gets it at 11th and Battle Harbinger gets it at 10th, but then gets the 4th level spells a level later. The Magus gets it at 13th level and the Battle Harbinger gets it at 14th. So yeah, you're basically taking a feat to get the same benefit that a Magus gets from their 7th level feature, but that doesn't make it bad necessarily, and particularly with the off-list spell access that you get with Haste, it's solid enough. Then we're going to move on to the other level 8 feat here, Harbinger's Armament. This allows you to select one weapon or hand wrap some mighty blows during your daily prep, and it gives you the effect of 1 property rune without counting towards your maximum rune count. This is either Fearsome, Ghost Touch, Returning, Shifting, or Vitalizing. So this is mostly going to be utility, and you can switch it out every day. Definitely decent enough of a pick if you want to have some more versatility every day, and if you have the ability to take advantage of these runes, then you'll definitely want to do so. Ghost Touch in particular and Vitalizing can be very, very good. And I have another point that I want to talk about with Harbinger's Armament later as well. But for now, we're going to move on to the level 12 feats. There's Empowered Onslaught. At level 12, it's a reaction once per round when you critically hit and sustain a battle aura, which it requires the Tandem Onslaught, where when you hit, you can sustain. So this allows you to, when you critically hit and sustain, use a reaction to increase the status bonus or penalty of one active battle aura you have by 1 to a maximum of 4, and that lasts for the rest of the aura's duration. So these spells only last 1 minute, but you can be increasing your malediction's status penalty to AC from -1 all the way to -4, and you can even have multiple of these active at once, since they don't go away if you don't sustain them. Sustaining them just gives you additional benefits. You could have Malediction alongside Bless, giving a +1 to +4 status bonus to attack rolls to yourself and your teammates, and the -1 to -4 status penalty to AC against all enemies and all your allies in your auras. You are swinging the math of the encounter quite strong. The only drawback is, of course, having to critically hit repeatedly, although you have some tools to kind of get there with the fact that you're able to buff yourself or debuff your enemies. Also at level 12 is Tandem Auras, where when you sustain a battle aura, you can also sustain another one. So this allows you to, if you have the setup time and resources to have multiple battle auras active, you can cast 2 and repeatedly sustain 2, and be gaining that benefit. Empowered Onslaught will still only let you choose 1 active battle aura, unfortunately, but Tandem Auras can definitely be getting that aura quite large, covering an entire battlefield, buffing and debuffing everyone. We move on to the level 16 feats here. Aura Expertise. As a free action, when your turn begins, you immediately gain the effects of the sustain action for one of your battle auras. So again, you get to continue to grow the size of your auras, and as you're gaining these various ways through which you can repeatedly sustain things, you can take better advantage of both Malediction and Bane, being able to get things to actually fail those effects. Although the sustain effect is still once per round, so don't go too overboard, too into it. Again, at level 16, and requiring Harbinger's Armament, the one that gave you those runes every morning, is Greater Armament. You add Brilliant, Corrosive, Flaming, Frost, Holy, Shock, Thundering, and Unholy to the list of runes that you are able to add during daily preparations. So this is just giving you, if you'd rather not go for the more niche or more utility runes, you can go just for an extra d6 of damage. And then finally, the level 20 capstone feat here is going to be Live the Creed, where you can cast a battle aura using one of your divine font slots, so this will only be the 6 slots that you have at this point, as a single action once per 10 minutes. So it can save you an extra action basically once per combat, getting your battle auras up to 6 times per day. Now when I zoom out here, I'm going to remove all of these notes, and I'm going to bring up my roundup notes because I have a bunch of things that I want to talk about, and we're going to go from start to finish again here. The first thing that I wanted to touch on is that Battle Harbinger is definitely built and styled around the idea of being a very offensive cleric. You get your auras up, and you get in and you do a lot of damage, you get critical hits, and you maintain a presence on the front line while your auras are putting in a lot of work for yourself and your team. And while I do think that it has the tools to fulfill this role, I do have some concerns about kind of how it's advertising itself and how it might get interpreted, specifically because of this flavor here at the beginning. In the descriptor for what Battle Harbingers are, it says, although a Battle Harbinger's spellcasting abilities are more limited than their fellow clerics, their magic generally isn't less potent. Battle Harbingers are still capable of calling down strong divine power, but they rely on this magic less often than their brethren. When I read this at first, I was a little excited, and I was a little surprised, I guess, to read in the doctrine adjustments that their spell casting was weaker than a cloistered cleric and was in fact the same as a war priest. I was expecting them to have wave casting, but also have full spell casting progression. Not necessarily that not having that is a bad thing, but that was just what I expected, having read that sentence. And so I want to be clear that if you're going to get into this, you are going to be a weaker caster. The only things that are not going to be weakened are going to be your battle auras. So the 2 to 4 spells that you can prepare in your font slots every day. And that's the other thing that I wanted to talk about. That is going to have to be something that you consider. And I'll bring up the notes here for that again. Is that you have the 4 to 6 slots from your font and the 1 to 4 slots from your normal spell casting, and that's all you get for your auras for the day, and you have to prepare them at the start. So you have to know whether you want to cast Bless or Bane, whether you want to be penalizing or benefiting your allies or your enemies. And then the same thing if you go further down the line here and grab the aura enhancement feat. You'll have to know if you want to be benefiting yourself and your party's AC or penalizing your opponent's AC. And while that's definitely not a super difficult thing to consider and think about, it is something that you should keep in mind, is whether you want to be focused on protecting yourself and your allies by debuffing enemy attacks and buffing your party's defense, or if you want to do the opposite and be more aggressive. And I would recommend, for the best experience with this class, at least as far as many of the features are indicating, that you go for the offensive route as far as that is concerned. The other thing is that despite everything, you are definitely still going to be more of a supportive measure on the field. And this is specifically because you don't have a ton of support for dealing damage. You can get hits in because you have these consistent increases to your attack modifiers, and you have your proficiency keeps up. You gain reactive strike, etc. So you can repeatedly hit things, and that allows you to build onto your aura, but your aura is still pulling a lot of the work. The only damage boosts that you get are still the same ones that every cleric gets. So you get weapon specialization at level 13, which is only going to be giving you up to 3 extra damage. You can still take advantage of other cleric feats, stuff like restorative strike to sort of enhance your longevity, or various feats like divine weapon or emblazon armament to supplement your damage. Domain initiate can definitely give you some advantages in the combat realm, and things like replenishment of war can supplement your sustainability on the front line as well. I also wanted to real quick point out divine weapon, very interesting. At level 6, once per turn as a free action, when you cast a divine spell from your spell slots, then you can do some spirit damage. And that's competing with Bespell strikes at the same level, which is definitely going to be doing a little bit more damage, unless you're able to take advantage of the 2d4 against creatures of the opposing trait. But more importantly than any of that is that you're going to be focusing more on getting hits in and supporting your team than you are being particularly damaging. The other thing that I wanted to touch on is that if we go to aura enhancement here, I just have a little underline to re-emphasize that these are prepared. So during your daily prep, you're going to want to be either splitting these half and half, or whatever you intend to use throughout the day, whatever you think will be most beneficial. And you're going to want to be careful with choosing what style of play you're going to want to engage with, whether that's supporting your team or attacking the others. And then finally, a lot of this can be, I think, best framed as seeing the 4 spells, Bless, Bane, Malediction, and Benediction, as sort of being added onto, like, heightening effects. for the Battle Harbinger. So I've added some levels here to show off essentially the rank of heightening that these feats are giving. So Tandem Onslaught is essentially a heighten effect at level 2.5, or well, rank 2.5, 3.5 on Exigent Aura, 6.5 for Empowered Onslaught, etc. And I've actually compiled that down here into a copy of Malediction so you can see what it kind of looks like. Because obviously the spells themselves, if I bring them up here, do not have their own heighten effects, and I know that it can definitely be experientially very disappointing to cast a rank 1 spell out of a higher rank spell slot if it doesn't have any heightening effect built in. So I wanted to kind of be able to frame it this way, where it might be a little bit more enjoyable to consider Malediction as, see, you give a -1 status penalty to creatures that fail their save within the aura, but then at 2.5 rank, when you hit and deal damage to an enemy, you can sustain it. Then at 3.5 rank, you can affect mindless creatures with it. Then at 6.5 rank, when you crit, you can sustain this to increase its AC penalty by one up to a maximum of -4. And then at 7.5 rank, you can sustain it when you sustain an ongoing of any of the other ones. And then at 8th rank, you can sustain it as a free action trigger by your turn beginning. And then at 10.5 rank, you can cast it as only a single action once per 10 minutes. So I think that can be an interesting and maybe more useful way to frame it if you end up being kind of frustrated by the fact that you're casting these level 1 or rank 1 spells out of your 5th, 6th, 7th rank slots, is that you're getting these heightened effects. And I think this is ultimately probably the best framing device for what this archetype is doing. You're not going to be an offensive frontline fighter who is doing a lot of damage. You're not going to be competing with a barbarian or a rogue or a swashbuckler, but you are going to be empowering your whole team or shutting down your enemies. And as long as you have the support either from the rest of your team, or you can build into it yourself by using scrolls to supplement yourself, pick up some heroism or what have you, then you can land some critical hits with Empowered Onslaught. And when it says Onslaught, it really means it. If you can get 2 critical hits off and afflict an enemy with, say, Benediction here, or Malediction here, the -1 penalty to AC, then you've already swung the combat 3 in your party's favor as far as hitting the enemy goes, or targeting their AC at all. And then the same thing, you can stack that with your other auras if you are willing to burn the extra resources. And I'm willing to bet that that's probably why the resources are specifically tied to your divine font and standard spell slots rather than any bless or bane you cast, is that otherwise you'd be able to cast 2 battle auras on every combat every day super consistently. It takes a lot of actions, yes, but it will end up paying off quite immensely once you're able to build up. And this Onslaught really does. It pushes forwards and means that you can kind of dominate a combat just with your presence. And I find this to be very, very interesting. The last thing that I wanted to touch on here is a much smaller thing. There's this very interesting sidebar here provided alongside the Battle Harbinger called Within the Church, where, or actually it was Champions and Harbingers, I believe. It was one of these 3 sidebars. Battle Creed. No, which one was it? There was a sidebar somewhere. It might have been under Palatine Detective, actually, or maybe I'm just overlooking it at the moment. But there was a tidbit of lore about how a Battle Harbinger, like a Vindicator, and an Avenger would all be sent out as a 3-party strike team to carry out combative missions for their deity. And I just found that to be a very, very interesting campaign or one-shot premise or small module premise, and something that maybe you might want to try in your home games. But to summarize everything with the Battle Harbinger here, I think it's been given, at least from what I've seen online, a pretty rough interpretation of what it has on offer. I think it's a super solid class archetype, and though it definitely does have some pain points that you'll have to consider, and it won't provide what I think some people will assume it will. What it does provide is solid enough for someone to take advantage of it. And if you're clever with your use of scrolls to supplement the fact that you have very few options for your normal spell casting throughout the day, and you're probably going to want to be investing that into more battle auras to maintain that presence, you're going to have a good time. Anyway, that's all from me. I'm looking forward to doing probably one more video covering Divine Mysteries here. There's a lot of really good stuff in the book, though, which I hope all of you enjoy seeing either in other videos or when it eventually comes out, or if you buy the book yourself. That's all from me today, but I will leave a like if you liked the video, subscribe if you would like to see more, and leave me a few bucks on coffee if you want to keep the channel running. I will see you all next time. See ya. See ya.